everybody, from the Loyal Jones Appalachian Center at Berea College. This is Head of the Holler. I want to thank you all for joining us today. We are up at the Indian Fort Lookout just east of Berea. Today is Mountain Day, and Mountain Day is a long tradition at Berea College where we have a day free of classes where everybody comes out to the mountain to celebrate nature and the Appalachian commitment at the college. Today I'm really pleased to welcome to Head of the Holler Kentucky songwriter and musician, and I should say acclaimed musician and artist, Ben Sollee. Ben, it's really a pleasure to have you on the program.
Thanks.
So, how would you describe your music?
Oh, right off the bat,
Yeah.
huh? If I'm in a pinch, I'm at a radio station and the guy's on air and he's like, describe your music to the public. I'll say it's folky R&B. But if I have a bit longer to describe it, I would say that it's just a product of kind of the melting pot that's been my life. You know, I grew up in a family that had a lot of music in the house.
Is that right?
My dad was an R&B guitar player. My mom sang. My grandfather was an Appalachian fiddler. But when I picked up the cello in public schools, the music that all the techniques are taught through on the instruments is classical music. So I was grandfathered into the classical music teachings by the instrument that I chose. So then I had all this kind of more social music, R&B, fiddle tunes, folk, and then I had classical, Bach, Brahms, etudes by Duport, like all these things. So I had these two kind of worlds, and those pushed and tugged on each other until I started playing with bands. I started playing with a blues musician, Otis Taylor, playing with a banjo songwriter, Abigail Washburn, and mixing all that classical and all that R&B and fiddle influence into these bands. It started to create a style in my cello playing, and then when I started writing songs, it was just sort of the next step.
So do you remember a day, and maybe it wasn't like this, but I think your playing is so distinctive. Do you remember a day when you're maybe practicing and you do something to the cello and you think, wow, that's different? And I mean, do you remember that sort of moment where you set on this course of what I think is a really unique style?
No. I've never had one moment when I was playing something on the cello and I thought, wow, that's innovative, because I feel like I'm just sort of stealing and borrowing from everything else that's come before me.
Mm-hmm.
All these techniques, these three-finger techniques and chopping and all this stuff, these are all techniques that are widely used on the guitar, fiddle, bass, banjo. All these techniques are there, and all I'm doing is playing with these musicians and sort of stealing those techniques and bringing them onto the cello. So
that's innovation, though.
I don't know if it is innovation. I think it's simply just sort of opening up the framework. It's sort of taking that idea of open architecture, open infrastructure, and just letting it be there. Mm-hmm. I mean, for instance, when you're living in like a dense urban area, you have all these influences on you that you don't get to have control over, for better or worse. Whether it's the people driving by in the cars playing loud music, or whether it's the type of traffic that you've got going on, your neighbors, the different stores and what they market to you, all this different stuff, and those are all influences on you. And I feel like all the music that I played influenced me, and it just naturally I just wanted to play it on the cello. I think the distinction is that I was just willing to go find that stuff on the cello, mm-hmm. rather than just restrict myself to the teaching mm-hmm. that existed in the cello.
Well, it's very distinctive. I remember clearly the day I first heard your music and thought, wow, this is really something.
Well, I'm glad.
So tell me about your grandfather, Appalachian fiddler.
He was an Appalachian fiddler. He was, most of the time that I hung around with him, he was there in Campbellsville in Manchester, Kentucky, sorry. And he grew up playing a bunch of fiddle tunes with some different musicians around. He had sort of a young dream of, going to Renfro Valley and playing music all over. And, he ended up doing some work in the coal mines and then went into the Navy and came back and ended up working in the Postal Service for a while. So, his music was never his career, mm-hmm. Or even that much of his of his lifestyle. It was just sort of a social thing that he did, which I think is, I sort of romanticize as a professional musician because I spend so much of my time within the industry of music and within the production of music rather than the socializing of music, actually just sitting down and playing.
And he could go out to the front porch and play for the social or the beauty of it.
That's really the only time he picked up the fiddle. I mean, he might practice every now and then just to work out something that he'd been thinking of, but I mean, the thing is they think a lot about their instruments. They think a lot about their music, and then once they get on them, they just, work out all those ideas. And then they'll set it down for a week, and they'll just be doing all the work that they have to do to manage the farm, and then they'll pick it back up and play some more. And they will have advanced because they're thinking of it. They're working on it while they're working with their hands. So I really felt like that's how he developed as a musician. He would think on it, and then he would get on the instrument.
So did he ever see you have your professional career?
Yeah, for a little while. He passed away when I was a junior in high school, so he got to see some of the like the orchestra concerts and stuff, and he loved seeing them. He's like, I'm not sure about that long hair music, but it sure looks like you're having fun.
That's great.
And I admired my grandfather a lot. His name was Elvis Henry Cornelius.
Wow.
He's a good dude.
And where did he live most of his life? Did he move out of the mountains?
Well, they're from Williamsburg area.
Okay.
But lived near Campbellsville. They had a farm near Campbellsville when I was young.
Terrific. Tell me a little more about your childhood or growing up, or how you got a musical instrument in your hands. Public school experience?
Yeah, I mean the cello ended up in my hands through public school.
Wow.
The teacher came around in 3rd grade and played all the various instruments, and I liked the way the cello sounded, so I picked it up and started playing in the tiny orchestra of 8 kids at Yates Elementary in Lexington, and continued through just public schools. I ended up going to performing arts school called Scapa in Lexington, and ended up doing a lot more theater than necessarily music there. But had a good time, and I think it's really important that I got to play my cello and picked it up in public schools, because it was always about playing with other people and putting you in situations that take you out of your comfort zone.
That's quite a testimony to all the public school superintendents who might be listening to this.
I think
in the age of limited resources and budget cuts for public education.
Absolutely, it's huge. I mean, I know a lot of kids, a lot of friends or acquaintances that I went through school with that fell on some harder times, and I felt like I always was able to keep out of that stuff because I had a cello and I had the expectations of an orchestra and an orchestra director and small chamber groups and everything. I had sort of those things were pulling on me more than
grounding you, I imagine.
Maybe grounding me, maybe ungrounding me. Depends on how people look at musicians as a career. But I think it was good for me, and I'm going after it.
So when did you think you wanted to do this as a calling?
I think I decided I was going to give it, as a career shot in college, my sophomore year in college. I was like, I'm going to give this a shot. And when I graduated from college, I said, I'll give myself 2 years and see where I'm at, and then maybe I'll head back to grad school or whatever. And in those 2 years, I put out Learning to Bend, and I was out on the road traveling with the Sparrow Quartet, and we did tours through China and Tibet. We did some European work and all over the States, and then I did some solo touring, and I was like, okay, I need to stay after this for a while. And so here I am with that, but I guess in college was definitely the point when I decided I would give it a shot.
Wow. Well, the viewers will want to stay tuned, because we'll put some of the concert that you did today with the college at Mountain Bay at the end. So they'll hear some of your music if they don't know it already. So Ben, you're also not just a great musician, but you're something of an activist and maybe an environmentalist. But talk about maybe the mountains and why they matter to you.
Oh boy. I sort of take Gene Ritchie's side on this stuff. I don't really feel like I'm much of an activist. I know some amazing activists, and they might play music, but they don't call themselves musicians. Like when it's your thing and it's embodied and you know the ins and outs of it, and you've put in over 10,000 hours at it, that's your thing. And so I don't feel like I can claim myself as an activist, but I do feel like I have some social responsibilities as a person, and that sort of comes through in my music.
Sure does.
And one of the things that I care about very much is the culture and the people of Appalachia. And those are in no small part due to, sort of their geography in these mountains. The little incubators that develop certain fiddle styles, or, the ghost stories of the coal mines. All these various things are embodied by the mountains. So the culture is sort of produced by the landscape in a way. It's definitely influenced in a big way. And so in that way, I really feel like it's important to protect these mountains. And it's a struggle for me on both sides, because I know that people are living, and my mom's family wouldn't be where they are. I wouldn't be where I am without the coal industry, without coal mines. In fact, I found out right after I put out this record, Dear Companion, which is a record to raise awareness about mountaintop removal coal mining, that actually the family mountain was stripped in this late 70s.
Wow.
It was like 2 days after that, and Mom was like, "You don't know where Grandma and Grandpa got their money?" I was like, "Oh, that changes everything."
So it teaches you a new complexity, I would imagine.
It reveals the complexity of the situation. So I guess coming back a little bit, I think it's important to protect the mountains, because the mountains provide for us, and they provide all of our headwaters and streams. They provide arable land. They provide wood and timber, springs, gas, all these things that they provide for us. The danger is overexploiting them, getting greedy about it. And the most obtuse example of that is definitely mountaintop removal coal mining. I can't believe that we would destroy one of these mountains, lift it off the ground, and dig out from its belly to get something just like coal. I know it's a heritage. I know it's a system with lots of infrastructure and lots of subsidies in place, but there are better systems. There are systems that they can make even more money at if they invested in it. But change is hard, and it's very easy to continue on as business as usual, especially in Central Appalachia, where so much of the money comes from coal, where so many of the coal trains gravitate to. It's very easy to say, if we don't have coal, we will not have money, we won't have industry, which is simply not true. There's lots of tools, there's lots of valuable things in these mountains besides coal, and not the least of which is the culture, the people that live there. And I really struggle when I see them having to leave that place because they don't have clean water, or their house is not worth a quarter of the money that they spent on it because the water's dropped out from their land, or just because people don't want to live near a coal mine. They're not coming near the mine. So I think it's extremely important to protect these mountains. And as I've been on this bicycle tour.
I want you to tell us about that.
Yeah, and one of the places where we rode through in the country was Colorado, which is beautiful, a more amplified version of mountains.
Newer mountains.
Younger mountains.
Yes, newer ones.
Yeah, more teenager-looking mountains.
Yeah, they're just in their adolescence, I think, right?
And the people there identify themselves so much with being outside and being able to run up and down these mountains and everything, and there's a lot of wealth based around the natural beauty of the place and all the sports and the challenge of it all. And these mountains are smaller, but if you really talk to cyclists and runners, some of the hardest training in the world is in the Appalachians, because it's just rolling, and deep water and rocks. And I don't understand why that view isn't held widely, why people don't congregate in Appalachia like they do in Boulder, Colorado, for the sports and for the beauty of the landscape. And that's one of the big things that I'm discovering about biking is I want to try to show people how beautiful it is to bike through Appalachia, to just get on and run through trails and everything. I mean, we're sitting on top of this mountain and we walked up this trail, and that was a challenging trail. Yes, I had my 2-year-old with me, but even still it would have been a challenging trail.
Maybe it's the socioeconomic differences. With wealth, you have a little leisure time, And a lot of families in Central Appalachia are struggling. But yet I know a lot of older people who older people who hike up the mountain behind their house every single day. Wouldn't miss it for the world. So.
Well, and I think it is, and I also think it's a new money. Well, new money. These people have lived in these mountains a lot longer. Man, this is hard to say. The pioneers settled these mountains before they settled those mountains. So there's kind of a we live here attitude as opposed to we compete here attitude. And just as you say, people get up in the morning and hike up their mountain in their backyard. It's just what they do here as opposed to who they are.
Right.
And people really make it who they are. You know, they walk in and out of the coffee shops in every store and they're like tight, you know, trail running pants and shoes and the sunglasses and everything. And it's part of a thing. And I'm not saying I want that for Appalachia, but it would be really cool if people recognized that it's just as beautiful and just as challenging a area to live in if you're a competitive athlete.
Yeah. And there are some parts of some subcultures like that in the mountains here, you know, maybe farther south in southern Appalachia or farther north up in Maine and New Hampshire and Vermont.
Absolutely. I mean, Asheville's got a big following for that stuff.
Yeah. So you mentioned your son. We hiked up with him. He's going to be 3 soon?
He'll be 3 in December. His name's Oliver.
That's right. And he kept saying he loves mountains, right?
He does.
On the way up here. So what kind of future do you envision for him regarding the area around where we are in the future? What kind of future would you like him, what kind of mountain future would you like him to grow up in?
That's a really good question. I would like him to grow up a little bit more connected to them than I did. To know a little bit more about how they work and how he can use them and how he can learn from them. I would like for him to be able to farm a little bit better than I can, which is something that I need to get working on.
It's hard when you're out on the road a lot.
It's hard when you're out on the road.
Keep the crabgrass down.
I'm really conflicted about all that, but mostly I just want him to appreciate the value of an intact natural mountain and not the value of the goods inside of it or the things that you can extract from it.
It's a moral question. A moral issue.
It's a moral question, and I also think it should be an economic question. I think there should be what is the value of a natural mountain, an untouched mountain, a native mountain? What's the value of it being there with all the water and the land value and everything versus the value of it being gone? And this is not just a question for Appalachia. This is a question for mountains in South America. This is a question for mountainous area in Africa. It's important. It's important for people to be able to identify as these industries come in and start spending money on their communities and neighborhoods that there's definitely value in what they have there now versus what they could sell from that place.
So tell us a little bit more about the bike tour. When you met some students today, I noticed they kept saying, or maybe not to you, but to some people who are with you, they kept saying, I think it's so great that you all showed up on bikes.
Yeah.
And I think probably with young people, it's a wonderful thing. How do other fans of yours take this notion of you touring around on this dear companion?
Well, I think some people find it novel. Others people find it adventurous, and some people find it an interesting experiment. And I think I end up talking to the people more that are on the adventure experiment side, because the people that think it's novel sort of kind of pass it off and chuckle about it. But people who are really interested in why I'm doing it, why would I take all the time when I could just get in a van and accomplish in 3 weeks what took me 2 months?
Blow a lot of carbon in the process.
Yeah, well, and I usually say to them, well, it's not about being green. It's not about going car free. A lot of this touring, the nature of the Ditch the Van tour, of doing a music tour self-supported by bicycle where we carry all of our gear, is to slow down, get a hold of the pace of the road again. I found myself on the road with these different bands and on my solo projects just racing through cities at a superhuman, almost comic book
Exhausting.
pace. And we were just in trains, planes, and automobiles. You know, we would fly from New York to San Francisco to play a festival, and then we'd drive down to San Diego to play a show after that outside the radius, and then we would fly out from San Diego back across the country and drive across to Canada and do another festival there, you know, and all that would happen in a week. And there's no way you can exist where you are on a human person-to-person level if you're traveling at that pace, because all you can do is focus on moving rather than being there. And so the bicycle I found to be a really good limitation. In fact, a really perfect limitation to slow me down. You know, managers and booking agents can't route you zigzags across the country. You have a route, you have as far as you can ride in a day, and you got about as fast as you can ride it. And that's your limitation. It's very human.
Does it help your songwriting?
It helps the rhythm in the show, I think. I think it helps because it gives me a chance to really focus on how my body's working and feeling rather than just racing into a show. And I think it also helps the other musician that's traveling with me, Jordan Ellis. We sort of link up rhythmically, and our rhythmic expectations of each other are a little tighter than they would be getting in and out of a van, where one of us might be on Facebook all day and the other might be reading a book.
And your heart muscle's a whole lot stronger.
Oh yeah, all my muscles are a lot stronger. So
your wife was saying to Jordan how thinner he is after this tour today.
Yeah, we've all slimmed down, but not much weight's been lost because we've added it back in muscle. So yeah, we got on our bikes and gear, we've got about 600 pounds of stuff that we're pedaling along with us. And so we figured that would take us at least a minivan, maybe probably a minivan with a trailer if we were going to do it. So the idea is that we just don't have a van.
So some of these Appalachian hills are lung busters.
Oh man. Well, last year when I did the first bike tour, it was from Lexington down to Bonnaroo, the music festival. And I did some of these very same routes. And the longest I'd ridden before that was 8 miles on my bicycle. And this time, with 1,500 miles under my belt already on this tour, it's a different ball game. Last time, some of those hills, it was all I could do to get up them and not puke my guts out. And this time, it was I just found myself just keep pedaling. And you know, some of it's muscle, some of it's gear, but a lot of it's just cycling skill, knowing how to really work those gears and keep your cadence. Very important.
Now, a couple years ago, I think National Public Radio Morning Edition named you one of the top 10 musicians you've never heard of.
Yeah.
That's very intriguing.
Interesting distinction.
Yeah.
Very interesting distinction.
I don't think they could say that right now.
Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. I'm very miffed by the music industry right now. I find that
you're probably not alone, are you?
I find that, well, not from the CD sales standpoint and all that stuff. I feel like all that stuff is everybody's just trying to find something to sell. It's from the standpoint of, you know, artists. We spend so much time trying to get the attention of people, whether it's record labels or movies or licensing and all that stuff. And, you know, I find myself looking at other small businesses around, whether it's a place making pasta or it's a guy making little wooden boxes. They're just focusing on making something good and having a sustainable small business. And we artists are constantly like trying to get our stuff out there and all this stuff. And I don't understand what that's all about. I'm struggling with it because we're trying to grow as a business and grow our awareness with the audience so that the music gets out there, but at the expense of what? What are we reaching for? Why are we trying to make a business deal with some huge record label? I'm miffed by it at the moment, Jad. I'm miffed.
Well, but when you look back to where you were in college when you decided to maybe try this, are you pleased?
Yeah. I mean, my basic goal is just to get to like a really good followership and sustainable spot by the time Oliver's 3 or 4, so that I can like maybe start doing some, go back to grad school and do some of that stuff, study rural design and community planning maybe, and still be able to go play music and just keep doing good music. That's really all I'm concerned with right now. It's just playing good music, doing it with people that I love and care about the music. And yeah.
Well, Ben Sollee, I really appreciate you taking the time to hike up today and
Yes, sir.
slow down a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And it's beautiful around the pinnacle here, the lookout, and I really appreciate your music. And I think you are an activist, actually, and I care about your commitment to the mountains and the people of Appalachia. So thank you very much.
Thanks, bud. Take care.
All right, we'll close with some scenes from today's concert at the Indian Fort Amphitheater with Ben Sollee. Thanks for joining us today on Head of the Holler.
Towards freedom, how else would you move that way? But I ain't as fast as I used to be, the dogs are catching up, but I'm gonna die either way, so I might as well die trying. Cause everywhere I look is looking back to where I'm looking when I get back to where I'm looking. Yes, everywhere I look is looking back to where I'm looking when I get back to where I'm looking. Yes, everywhere I look is looking back to where I'm looking when I get back to where I'm looking to go.